Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Season 8 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today, I'll be covering top lane Darius, the Hand of Noxus.
Ha! Looks like it didn't take.
Alright, let's kick off this champion guide by first looking at his pros. Darius is a champion that has some relatively high damage, and he doesn't even need a lot of damage items to accomplish this. He's got some great sustain which comes from his Q ability, and he is one of the best lane bullies in that top lane. Darius is even a champion that has some very high snowball potential, and if he does get to a very big point in the game, he can even 1v2 targets rather easily. If he gets to that point, he might not even care about getting ganked, because if he does, it's just a free 2 kills anyways. Now, although Darius is a strong top lane champion, he still has his fair share of cons. First, he is a top laner that has some pretty low mobility, so he is fairly easy to kite and gank. Therefore, you will have some pretty hard matchups, most of which are ranged champions, and you may want to consider taking Ghost as your second summoner spell so you do have that extra mobility. Now, Darius is also really strong in the early and the mid game, but he is a champion that falls off in the late game. Therefore, you definitely want to focus on getting an early lead and abusing your enemy top laner so you don't even make it to the late game. And finally, Darius is a mediocre peeler. He does have his E to pull people off and his W to slow, but other than that, he doesn't have peeling. For your runes, you want to go for Precision and Resolve, grabbing Conqueror as your Keystone. This is great on Darius because after 4 seconds you will get a nice portion of AD, and some of it will also be true damage. This is great against all sorts of different champions, especially the tankier ones in the top lane. You'll then want to continue by getting Triumph so your takedowns restore some missing health and grant you additional gold, and then pick up Alacrity so those takedowns also give you permanent attack speed. Then finally, pick up Coup de Grace so you'll deal more damage to low health enemy champions. In the Resolve side, you then want to go for Bone Plating and Chrysalis. Bone Plating is really strong because you will be a lot tankier, and it's really great at surviving any of the poke damage from ranged champions in the top lane. You'll then want Chrysalis so you're just a bit tankier in the early game, and after you do get 4 takedowns, you'll get some attack damage instead. As your Keystone, you could of course also go for something like Grasp of the Undying, but usually I find you get a lot more from Conqueror. For your summoner spells, you first want to pick up Flash. This is a really solid summoner spell on Darius because he is a rather immobile top laner, and you can use this throughout the game over and over again to save your life if you do get caught in a really bad position. You can of course also use it offensively as well and hit the target with either a W or an E to slow or pull them in to get yourself a kill. Now, as for your second summoner spell, I'll pretty much always take Ghost. This can be used as another escape in that lane phase, or you can also use it offensively as well in team fights to move around quickly and get to those squishier targets. Alright, now let's cover your abilities, starting with your passive, Hemorrhage. So this is an innate ability that makes your basic attacks and your abilities bleed the enemy for 5 seconds, and it can stack up to 5 times. As long as there's 5 stacks, this will do between 65 and 150 based on level, plus 150% bonus AD physical damage over that duration. Whenever you get 5 stacks on a target, you'll then get Noxian Might. This will give you between 30 and 230 based on level, bonus attack damage, and it instantly applies full hemorrhage stacks through his usual means. So this here is a really strong ability because it will give you some extra harassment and makes you really strong in the lane phase and a big time lane bully. Whenever you get 5 stacks, you of course are going to become a lot stronger, and you can do a lot of damage even though you usually go for a pretty tanky build. Now let's look at that Q ability, Decimate. When you activate the ability, after 0.75 seconds, you'll swing your axe around and do physical damage to all targets, which is reduced 35% against targets that are inside the circle, aka hit by the shaft. Darius also heals for between 12 and 36% based on enemy champions hit by the blade, missing health. The shaft of his axe, however, will not apply hemorrhage stacks or heal him. So therefore, of course, you will want to try to hit people with the blade of the axe and not the shaft so you can actually apply your hemorrhage, do a lot more damage than usual, and also sustain yourself. It's an amazing ability for farming throughout the lane phase, it'll do a lot of damage to the enemy champion, and it's great harassment. In those later team fights, you'll want to hit as many targets as possible with the blade because you can get a really large amount of health back. Next we have your W, Crippling Strike. When activated, your next basic attack within 4 seconds gains 25 bonus range, deals bonus physical damage, and slows the target by 90% for 1 second. If this ability happens to kill the target, it refunds its mana cost and half of the cooldown. Then finally, this ability also resets your auto attack timer. Since it does this, it's a pretty great way to stack your bleeds on a target really quickly. If you auto attack W auto attack, this will get 2 stacks of bleeds on the target really quickly and can really increase your damage. Of course, this is also a really strong slow, so it's a great way to help you stick onto a target. Also, keep in mind it is pretty decent for last hitting as well, because if there is 2 low minions, you can auto attack one to finish it off, W to reset your auto attack timer, and attack the next one to get both last hits. Next is your E ability, Apprehend. Passively, this ability gives you armor penetration, and when you do activate it, after a brief delay, you'll pull in all enemies in front of you and slow them by 40% for 1 second, and briefly grant sight around the pull. So this here, yet again, is another really solid ability because it gives you armor penetration that scales with the points in the ability, and it's a great way to pull a target into yourself so you can kill them. As I've said before, you are a pretty immobile champion, so this ability is pretty strong because as long as you can get kinda close to your target, you can pull them towards you and follow up with the rest of your kit. It's not as strong as your Q ability, but it's really solid because it does have scaling armor penetration. And finally, we've got your ultimate Noxian Guillotine. When activated, you'll attempt to execute the target enemy champion, dealing true damage increased by 0 to 100% based on your hemorrhage stacks. If Noxian Guillotine kills its target, Darius causes all nearby enemy minions and monsters to flee in terror for 3 seconds, during which they are rapidly slowed by 99% over the duration. You'll be able to cast this within the next 20 seconds at no additional cost, and it can occur over and over again. If this ultimate is level 3, however, it just comes off cooldown, it doesn't only last for 20 seconds. So this here is why Darius is known as the DUNKMASTER. It is a really strong execute ability, and you will want to try to have hemorrhage stacks on your target so it will do a ton of damage. You will want to make sure that the enemy will die from this ability so it comes off cooldown and you can dunk multiple targets over and over again if there is a bunch of low enemies. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then focus on maxing your Q ability as quickly as possible because it's some really nice harassment on the enemy champion, and it's also great at farming multiple minions. Then, since you do have some scaling armor penetration, you will want to max your E ability second. This will really help you deal with the tankier targets on the enemy team. This of course means you want to max your W ability last, but I really like taking a point in the ability early on at level 2 so I can slow my enemy and quickly apply a second stack of my bleed. During the lane phase, farming is the first thing that's important to focus on. Generally, you will just be using your auto attacks, but if you do need to, you can always use your decimate to help you AoE clear the minion wave and get a bunch of last hits at once, or to shove it under the enemy tower. Always remember as well that you can use your Crippling Strike to reset your auto attack timer to quickly last hit 2 minions because the cooldown and the mana cost is reduced. The other part that is important about your lane phase is trading. You are known as a really strong lane bully, and you should try to get an advantage over the enemy laner. Try to hit the enemy and sustain yourself with your Q ability, and also stack your bleeds on that enemy as well for its nice harassment. When teamfighting on Darius, you have 2 main options. You can either fight on the front line and try to kill the enemy front line and peel for your carries, or you can always go on the enemy back line and try to delete those squishy targets instead. You want to use your decimate to hit as many targets as you can to start stacking your bleeds, deal AoE damage, and give yourself a lot of sustain. When you can, try to pull in squishy targets with your Apprehend and use your Crippling Strike as an auto attack reset and slow. Of course, when targets do start getting low, make sure you delete them with your Noxian Guillotine, and if you can, delete multiple over and over again. Now let's look at some of your hard matchups, and first up is Jace. Jace is going to be a pretty hard matchup for you because of course he does have his range form and will be poking you over and over again throughout the lane phase. He can of course also use this range to stay at a pretty safe distance, which means you won't have an easy time bullying him. You'll want to play pretty carefully and wait until he's out of position to pull him in with your E and then go for an all-in. Next up we've got Kale. She's also going to be a really hard matchup for you because she does a lot of damage from range, which of course is hard for you to deal with. Her passive also makes her shred armor and magic resist, so she's really hard to itemize against because of the build that she does go for, it is hybrid. She can also do some pretty good kiting with her Q ability, so play really safely and just wait until she's out of position because she's very hard for you to deal with. Next is, surprise surprise, another range matchup, Quinn. She is yet again a really hard matchup because she is a ranged champion, and since you lack mobility, you can't really get on top of her. Against a Quinn, even if you do pull her in, she can always use your E ability to jump away from you. She's even hard to deal with than the other matchups. Therefore, be very careful, build a bunch of armor, and hopefully you can survive the lane phase. And for the last hard matchup, I have got Teemo. He, just like all the other champions, is a ranged champion that can abuse you throughout the entire lane phase, so you will have to build pretty defensively and wait until he is out of position to pull him in and then go for a trade. Focus on building your defensives and some nice regeneration because he will be poking you throughout the lane phase, and it is a lot of damage that you can't really deal with. Alright, now let's cover the item build, which starts with a Doran Shield, Health Potion, and a Warding Totem. In easier matchups, you could of course go for something like a Doran's Blade or a Corrupting Potion instead, but usually I find you get a lot more from the Doran's Shield because of all the nice extra tankiness and health regeneration. For your core items, you have a Trinity Force, Sterak's Gauge, and a Deadman's Plate. You do of course also have the option of going for a Black Cleaver instead of a Trinity Force if there is a really tanky lineup, but usually you will get a lot more damage from the Trinity Force and it makes you a really bursty champion. You then of course have the Sterak's Gauge there to add even more damage as well and some really nice tankiness, and then you follow up by getting the Deadman's Plate. This item's going to give you some really nice added tankiness, and you'll also get some really nice momentum as well, which really increases your mobility and can help you get onto targets. Now, in between these core items, however, you'll definitely have to pick up your boots, and you'll want either Ninja Tabbies or Mercury's Treads. Ninja Tabbies will be the option if you're against a high AD team, and Mercury Treads will be great against high AP and CC heavy teams. Now, as for your item pool, first you have the Spirit Visage. This is a very strong magic resist option because of course it has that MR, a really nice health pool, and increased healing as well on it, which makes your Q even more powerful. If you are looking for some magic resist, this is usually the option you want to go for. If instead you want to add a little bit of damage, you could always go for Titanic Hydra. This will yet again give you a really nice health pool, but it also has some nice regeneration on it as well, and some really nice AD. It will make your auto attacks AoE as well, which makes it great for split pushing. Now, as for some armor options, you have Randuin's Omen and Thornmail. Randuin's Omen is great against high crit teams because it reduces crit damage, and Thornmail is great to reflect damage back at the enemy and also apply grievous wounds. Now, as your last option, you of course have a Guardian Angel. This will yet again increase your damage because it has some nice attack damage on it, but the defensive shield that allows you to come back to life is also very, very strong on the item, and often the one I pick up 6 in my item build. For your example full build though, you want to take a Trinity Force or a Black Cleaver, choose your boots, take Sterak's Gauge, Deadman's Plate, Spirit Visage, and a Guardian Angel. You'll be a very, very tanky champion, but you'll still do a lot of damage at the same time with the Trinity Force, Sterak's, and the Guardian Angel, and you will of course have the defensive shield as well to come back to life. And that covers everything for Darius.
If you guys enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and visit my video description below. I have a link to all my social medias, and I do also have a Discord server, so that's one you should definitely check out. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for watching. I really do appreciate it, so take it easy, have a good day, and peace.